As far as vehicles go in terms of their chances of returning in Gran Turismo's future, which of course is the whole point of going back to GT6 to re-review these, I will freely admit, as much as I personally adore this car, and basically its entire platform in every game that has it, what few games do seem to have it these days, it has a very, very low chance, comparatively, of coming back in the future. However, if you look at some of the other cars that we've had in updates, some of the other cars that were in the leaked data mining list, stuff like Mark V Golf R32s and various others, I think it does have a chance, especially if you consider it was already a premium, it is a relative newcomer to the series, and it kind of looks and feels to me like it has that sort of completely random vibe where you could totally see it being one of a 3-car update, for example, or even a day one vehicle in the next game. I would not be at all surprised if neither of those things happen, but the reason why I love this car is partially because so many people undervalue it, but also because it's just a fantastic car to drive in terms of being pure fun. In particular, Polyphony's choice of which version to add doesn't make much sense. Now, I don't recall exactly on the timeline where the R26 or the R26R would have debuted in relation to the release of Gran Turismo 6, but you've got to think, given that Gran Turismo has had cars just occasionally which have technically come out after the release of the game. A prime example is Gran Turismo 4 featuring the 2006 Mitsubishi Eclipse GT, which I believe is later than the game technically was, so that does sometimes happen, but very, very rarely. This of course is a 2008 Renault Sport Megane RS, and my personal favourite by far is the R26 F1 team. In the bright yellow, 3-door version of course, again another strange choice here of adding the 5-door instead of the 3, it's longer, heavier, but the R26R would definitely make the most sense in a game like Gran Turismo. In fact, I'm kind of shocked, given Kaz's love for track days and racing, that he isn't a huge fan of something like that. Maybe he just hasn't driven one, or whatever the case may be, but it is undeniable how much of a legend in the modern hot hatch sense that the R26 and the R26R are in the hot hatch sphere. It's one of the best platforms, and Renault is consistently one of the best, up there easily with Honda Type Rs, in terms of just being the best front-wheel drive chassis hot hatches you can get. And for me, one of the key reasons why I love this generation, and to be honest haven't had too much interest in the Meganes to come after, aside from maybe the most current one, is they almost sort of lost that charm, they lost that edge. They got bigger, more powerful, heavier. That kind of wasn't the point to begin with. You didn't buy Megane because it was the most powerful choice. You bought it because it was more of like the Type R choice. It was that more track day, focused, sharp, kind of almost rally car or touring car for the road approach. The newer cars just don't quite have that for me. In my case, I barely use any Renaults in Gran Turismo. The funny thing is though, in GT6, you could say that for most people about this car. Now that's funny because on paper at least, it has a lot to work with. 220 horsepower, 221 foot-pounds of torque, so a good thumpy engine. It does weigh a bit more than you would hope at 1400 kilos, which is a bit of a shame, but it's just over 40 grand, so it's cheap. It was already a premium, so that has to count for something, you would think. And of course, being a Renault, even if it's not the R26, it is going to be quick and it's going to be good. And that it is, in standard form, which is basically what I'm using here, aside from just repainting it a more interesting colour than the standard flat silver, blue, red, etc. that it comes in. It does have a bit of play on the suspension side of things. You can see it kind of dives a bit under braking, but it's a standard road car, so even in a hot hatch sense, that's not too much of a surprise. In standard form, again, it feels just a tad top heavy perhaps, but of course none of that is something you can't fix with some well-placed upgrades and tuning. Lower it a bit, stiffen the springs and dampers, drop some weight out, you're pretty much good to go. And that's the beauty of this platform. In fact, it's one of those cars which, in particular in R26 form, I keep coming back to in terms of actually buying one in real life, and who knows, maybe I eventually will, but for the moment it doesn't quite fit into the different uses that my cars have at the moment, so I just haven't got around to it. And speaking to my love for the car, it is basically the last of my absolute favourite hot hatches that I'm yet to drive and review, so I really hope it doesn't let me down. But I've driven the Focus RS, I've driven the Panda 100 HP, my own Daihatsu, these top tier favourites for me, but this one is a glaring example of a car that I haven't yet had the chance to drive. And I think, to be honest, one of the reasons why this car probably wasn't that popular in GT6 is because two things really. One, if you live outside of Europe, you're probably not really very familiar with the sport versions of this generation of Megane, and it certainly doesn't attract that much attention to itself. It's a pretty normal looking car, especially in 5-door form. And the second reason is because, let's be honest, most people who are going to the Renault dealership in GT6 are probably going there for one reason: Clio V6, and that car is the exact opposite. It's over the top, so of course that car gets all the attention, and you could say justifiably so. It is certainly more of a legend, but Renault has this consistent track record of making legends every single time. Clio Williams, Clio V6, Megane R26 and the R26R are quickly going that way. Some of legitimately the best hot hatches around, Renault 5 Turbo of course being another prime example, and in rally rally form, we are still waiting for that to come back. I would not be at all surprised if this one doesn't return in GT7 or even perhaps in a GT8, if you will, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it were just a random edition. It's a bit of a weird car, and I think most of you could probably understand what I mean. It's not the kind of car which players are clamouring for, that's for sure, but it's also the kind of car which I could totally see just randomly popping up, because it just sort of has that vibe. And on a relatively rare occasion where that does happen, I wouldn't mind it too much, because I am a massive fan of this generation of the Megane, especially in its higher performance forms. For most players, you probably wouldn't care less. I will say, it would definitely make a lot more sense though to add an R26 or an R26R. That's it for this video though. Of course, there's plenty more to talk about in terms of race cars, concept cars, road cars, all kinds of stuff which I do believe has a range, let's say, of a lesser chance to a higher chance of returning in the future, so stick around for more of those, and for now, thanks for watching.